Presenting Raymond Carlin is his friend and colleague, Douglas Gerritsen.
Good morning. In the early 1970s, as the pioneers of Freedom House were saving lives in the Hill District while simultaneously battling City Hall in the media, and while Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto came into our homes and our hearts on Saturday evenings, there was a plethora of EMS agencies that began sprouting up all across Allegheny County. By the end of that decade, there were probably almost as many ambulance services as there were municipalities. 130 plus municipalities, well over 100 EMS agencies. But they weren't all equal. And soon thereafter, certain agencies started to separate and rise above the rest. In the South, there was the legendary Gary Burnworth and Valley Ambulance Authority. And Mary Ann Scott and her sidekick, Nora Helfrich, would try Community South. Two ladies who would be more appropriate to do this introduction today than me. And then in the midst of that group rose Medical Rescue Team South under the leadership of Ray Carlin. I went to meet Ray back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. I went to meet this guy who, word was he was innovative and was doing all the new stuff. And I was an individual that wanted to learn more. And there he was when I walked in the door. Someone I'd known from my paramedic class in '74, but, not an overwhelming individual. Somewhat quiet, but direct, knowledgeable, innovative, and inviting, and willing to share with just a little bit of pride those things that he was doing. As time went by, I watched as Ray revolutionized without fanfare Medical Rescue Team South, engaged his communities, and softly rose to become the leader of a region, and today to be recognized as a legend of EMS. Throughout all of this, I cannot remember many times when I met with Ray where somewhere close by wasn't his beloved Ruth. At times there were some of us that thought, was Ray really the guy or was Ruth pulling the strings? But regardless, Ruth was an integral part of Ray's support, and all of us are grateful for that. I look forward this morning, as you do, to Ray sharing some insight into the details of his legendary career and success. And now it is my honor and privilege to welcome to all of you to the stage, legend of EMS, Ray Carlin.
Good morning. First of all, let me say how honored I am to have this recognition. Many of you out there deserve it much more than I do, but I'll take it. So anyway, and thank you, Doug, for that glowing and somewhat BS introduction. Your check's in the mail. I want to thank everyone who brought this event to fruition today, the selection committee, Jesse Sievert, Gary Harvad, who herded all the cats here. But most of all, I also want to thank my coworkers, my friends, and I want to thank my family because, Doug alluded to the fact that Ruth might be actually a big piece of what happened. She's everything that happened. My wife, Ruth, was my right arm and my left arm. And so many things that we tried to do over the years that I was interested in would not have happened if it wasn't for Ruth. So thank you. We're kind of going to do this in a chronological format because I think it'll work better for you. Back in the late 60s, I graduated from Mount Lebanon High School. I was headed off to the University of Pittsburgh, and I was going to be a doctor. eventually. And so from 1969 through 1971, while I was going to Pitt, in the summers, I went over to St. Clair Hospital. The first summer that I went there, they offered me a job as a porter. Hmm. I see some eyes going, what? Exactly. I said, what's a porter? Well, a porter is the guy who empties the trash, mops the floors, and washes the walls. And I said, let me think about that. And I didn't go back that summer. The following summer, I was out of money and I really needed to work. And they saw me coming. The guy had the same job. And they put me on maternity, which was the only place that you could work in the hospital as a male, okay, unless you were a physician. And so for the whole summer, I worked in maternity, the labor and delivery area, the nurseries and all. And I had my first real experience of being in a caregiving environment. 1970, and the following summers, I went back. They offered me the porter's job again, and I said, "No, I think I qualify to be an orderly now." And they said, "Okay, you could be an orderly." And during the summer, I worked everywhere in the hospital: operating room, emergency department, med surge, pediatrics. Didn't matter where they needed me. That's where I went, and of course, a lot more patient care. At the end of my college career, I found out that I wasn't going to go to medical school. My grades weren't good enough. They were good, but not good enough to get into medical school. And that was kind of foretold by the chairman of the board of the biology department in my junior year. And everybody in the room, 150 of us, were all biology majors. And the professor doesn't usually show up to teach. It's usually one of his underlings. But this day he came in and he stopped halfway through the lecture and he said, 90% of you are applying to medical school. And I'm here to tell you that 90% of those people aren't going to get in. So I kind of wondered, what did you think you were going to do with the rest of your life? And I had no idea. So I went back to work at St. Clair Hospital. They just opened a psychiatric unit, and I was fit for that. And and I was pretty upset because I didn't go to medical school. I was sorry, mom and dad. Didn't know what I was going to do. A year later, I decided to go to the Graduate School of Nursing at New York Medical College. And in 2 years, I was going to earn my master's in nursing as well as my RN. That lasted about a year. Finances got in the way. Other things got in the way, and I ended up coming back to Pittsburgh. Once again, kind of feel like a failure. And sorry, mom and dad, what am I going to do? I went to live with my brother Dave. Thanks, Dave. He's here today. He put up with me for a couple of months and went back to work as an orderly in the emergency department at St. Clair Hospital. And at that time, what I noticed was we were doing a lot of transfers. Come 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the hospital was full, and anybody that needed to be admitted, they were going to get transferred to a city hospital. So I saw a lot of ambulance crews coming in, and I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll go see what that's all about. So I went down to Bridgeville to Wolf Ambulance, talked to Ed Wolf. He said, well, if you want to come work here, you got to become an EMT, and I'll sponsor you to the North Hills Fire Academy. And that's where I went, and I became one of those 81-hour wonders as an EMT. I went to work for Wolf Ambulance part-time. I still worked at the hospital, and mostly transfers, but some true emergencies, cardiac arrests, overturned cars, strokes, all that sort of thing. And while there, I met Ruth and Bob and Russell. There were these 2 little kids. One was 3 years old, and he was in double casts on his legs. And the other, his brother, Bob, was 7 years old. And they're playing in a gravel parking lot. And Russ was wearing right through his casts. And one thing led to another. I got to know the kids. We enjoyed each other's company. I went next door where their mother, Ruth, lived, recently divorced. And I said, I think I can help you with those casts because I work in the emergency department at the hospital and we have a cast room. I'll bet I could come up with some cast material. And by the way, the statute of limitations is gone, so you can't come get it. It's over. Okay. So anyway, so I got to know Bob and Russell really well, and of course their mother. And one of the things Ruth decided to do as thanks was she made me a cherry cheesecake. I love cherry cheesecake. And she won me over. So while I was there, living in Bridgeville, in 1974, 75, I went to Columbia Hospital to become a paramedic. Dr. Alan Shatner was our administrator. He was the man. He was our medical director. And it was there that I first met Mary Ann Scott. Mary Ann Scott was the instructor for the course. Dr. Alan Shatner at the end of the course said to me, "Okay, Ray," he says, "now here's what you gotta do. Keep the strips. Call me if you need me." Because he's at Columbia Hospital. I'm in Bridgeville, right? "And don't kill anyone." So, okay. Anyway, the course that was taught by Mary Ann Scott and others used Dr. Nancy Carlin's pre-print paramedic manual. And most of you may have never seen this before. You will never get it out of my hands. At the same time, in 1975, in Mount Lebanon, there was a new chief of police. His name was Dave Verrilman. Dave came from California. And in California, the police officers didn't provide transportation in back of station wagons for people who needed it. So unless you were going to jail, but if you're going to the hospital, he wanted to get his police officers in Mount Lebanon out of the ambulance business. So he took a look at what he could do. And one of the things he found was that Dr. Peter Saffer lived in Mount Lebanon. And the Freedom House Project was well underway. So he engaged Dr. Saffer, who brought in Jerry Esposito, who brought in Mary Ann Scott. And together, they put together this program to put paramedics in an ambulance in Mount Lebanon. And they needed funding. And so they went back to the same well they had used for Freedom House, which was Title VIII unemployment, under and unemployed monies that were administered through the county. In 1975, the end of the year, I was hired as one of the first full-time paramedics on the Mount Lebanon Police Medical Rescue Team. At the same time, a similar project was going by South Hills Ambulance, also funded through the feds, for Dormont, Castle Shannon, and Baldwin Township, and that was called Rescue 2. And we backed each other up. We did mutual aid for each other. The end of the first full year of operation, we wanted to continue funding. We wanted to get more money. And the Fed said, "You don't have enough advanced life support calls to justify 2 advanced life support ambulances, so we're only going to fund 1. You guys decide what you're going to do." So 13 communities from the South Hills got invited to come down, send representatives to the county courthouse, to the Gold Room. And they talked about providing emergency medical services throughout the South Hills area. One by one, 9 of those communities dropped out, said they would do something else, they weren't interested, whatever. And the 4 original ones, Baldwin Township, Castle Shannon, Dormont, and Mount Lebanon, decided they would drop their parochial boundaries, they would join together, and they would form Medical Rescue Team South. And so that's how we got started as Medical Rescue Team South on January 1st of 1977. At the same time, we knew we needed another ambulance. So we started a basic life support ambulance with volunteer EMTs, and that was called Rescue 2. I was appointed the senior paramedic, and I think in part because of the useless bachelor's degree in biology. Oh my, okay. And you remember that woman, Ruth, and the two boys? Well, we got married in 1977 and we moved to Mount Lebanon. Ruth has been married and I've been married together now for 49 years. And she is my right hand and my left. Thank you. One of the priorities at that time was to get more people involved and knowledgeable about emergency medical services. You could see an ambulance going up and down the street, and you might notice it, but you don't pay a lot of attention to it necessarily unless they're coming to your house or next door. And we needed to let people know about who we were, what we were trying to do, get their interest and attention, and make them want to participate to the degree that they could. So some projects that we did over the years to cause that to happen was I became an EMT instructor, a CPR instructor. I became an instructor trainer for the Heart Association. We began teaching at EMT courses at community college at the time. We taught high school CPR classes. We did a CPR marathon in the community. We trained 1,400 people in one weekend in the old 4-hour CPR program, 1,400 people in one weekend. We had a project called Envelope of Life. Some of you may remember that, or some people call it Vial of Life. It's a way for us to have people in the community put together their medical history, their medicines, their allergies, put it all into an envelope or a vial and stick it in the refrigerator. And people would ask me, well, why the refrigerator? I say, because the medics can always find the refrigerator. Okay. Anyway, that was one way of getting into the community. And then we wanted to get to the people who were in their 30s and 40s and had kids in elementary school because they weren't even thinking about ambulance service. And so we started a junior paramedic training program in the elementary schools. We went to 17 elementary schools in our area. We did 51 classes. And in those classes, the kids had to take information, go home, do some work at home with their parents, get the certificate signed off, bring it back, and then they would get their junior paramedic certificate. And so we got into the homes that way. But we also needed to have a mascot. And we decided the mascot would be a penguin. And so we had a big outfit made up with a hat and all that sort of thing. And Paramedic Penguin was our mascot. And we needed somebody to wear the outfit. Ruth. And she did for almost all of the 51 classes. She was also working in the office and helping us there at that time. We did a scouting explorer post. We did, thanks to Dr. Vince Macesso, who's here today, a former paramedic with us who came back as a physician and said, you know, your police respond to almost every call that you go on. They're usually in the community traveling. They can get there before us, the ambulance. Why don't we try putting automated defibrillators in the hands of the police officers? And so he went and got funding for the project. We put it together, and by the end of the time, we had 6 or 7 communities in the South Hills working on that project, and I think a lot of lives are saved because of that. I joined the Allegheny County EMS Council, the EMS-I, now EMS West, and I taught at community college, at the Center for Emergency Medicine, and also, of course, for the Heart Association. Over the years, one of the things that I said to people is, learn from others, don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what other people have done because they've been down the road already. Teach others and share your knowledge. In 1984, Medical Rescue Team South became a municipal authority. We now wore 3 hats. We wore the healthcare hat, we wore the government hat, and we also wore, thanks to Gary Burnworth, the charitable organization 501c3 hat. And that makes a difference later on. During the time I was there, Whitehall joined the service. Green Tree joined the service. We built a brand new purpose-built station for our main headquarters. And in part, the station was funded by a $350,000 grant that we got, not a grant, a gift that we got for two reasons. One, the medics had taken such good care of this woman's brother when he was sick. And two, we had a 501c3. And that's why we got $350,000. So I recommend to anybody who's thinking about how to organize your group, you should become a charitable organization. You can do it. The IRS will designate you that way. And then people can make donations to you and write them off. Okay. In 1998, I get recruited by Walt Stoy. Dr. Stoy has a project going in Saudi Arabia, and he wants someone to go over there and be on the ground. So I resigned from the medical rescue team. I took the job, and within a month, I'm in the sands of Saudi Arabia, trying to help the Red Crescent Society to improve their performance and training in emergency medical services. Oh, by the way, I got that job because I had a bachelor's degree in biology. A couple of years later, I'm back in the United States. The project had ended, and I get a call from Marianne Scott. Keep your friends close. Marianne calls me. She says, "Do you know that Physio Control has an opening for a representative?" No. She says, "Well, give Tom Olson a call, the manager, because he's got an opening." So I did. I called Tom. We had an evening meeting, dinner meeting, 3-hour meeting where I got grilled. And one of the things he said to me was, okay. He says, "Why do you want to work for Physio Control?" And I said, "Well, I know the equipment. I've always used it. I understand the market, emergency services, police and fire, municipalities, so I'm comfortable with that. And I like to teach. I really like to teach. But I've also spent 25 years in public safety and healthcare, and I'm 50 years old, and I need to prepare for retirement. I need to make as much money as I can before I retire." Bingo, he said, "That's the right answer. You got to want to make the money." He says, "They will make lots of money or you won't be here long." So I was with them for 13 years. But guess what happened? He says, "We can't hire you unless you have a bachelor's degree." Here it is. So I did that for 13 years. I covered Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I was in almost every emergency medical service, police and fire department. I need to let you know, and you all know this is all a team effort. Everything that occurred in my entire life was all done with other people. And two of the guys who worked for Physio Control, now retired, Bill Calhoun and Ed Alvarez, are here today. And they were like my secret sauce. When I would go in and sell a heart monitor, okay, I would make sure that the customer also bought a service agreement, because those guys is what kept everything moving. And so thank you, Ed and Bill, for making my job easier. How did I sell? Well, actually, I sold by educating the buyer. This is what this can do for you. This is how your job will be better. This is how you can make a difference. I showed them what the equipment can do. And if they did buy our equipment, then they got trained. And I would come in and do the training, and there was some significant training that went on. Capnography, 12 lead EKG, defibrillation, pacing, everything that they needed to know. And my classes were at least 4 hours in length. But I enjoyed that part of the job quite a bit. Today I'm retired. I live up in Mercer County in Greenville. I want to wrap up by saying a couple of things. Number one, none of this could have happened without Ruth and my partner and my boys. Be open to opportunities. Watch for them. Allow your contacts and your acquaintances and friends to help you, and be sure you help them. Think outside the box. Don't stop getting educated. Be proud of your work. Everything you do, no matter your role, EMT, paramedic, physician, mechanic, secretary, repair specialist, administrator, board member, It all makes a difference. You will rarely see it immediately, but maybe 2 police officers in a station wagon will arrive, ready to break down the door to help your father, alone at home with chest pain, like happened to my family in Mount Lebanon in 1963. Maybe there'll be a student like Jim Perry, high school student on his way home, who sees a man collapsed in a parking lot, and he goes up and he begins CPR. And later on, a man shows up at our door months later and puts his hand out and says, "My name is Ernie Klein, and I want to put my hand in the hand of the man who saved my life." Maybe there'll be a 6-year-old at home who helped her mom when the 3-year-old pulled hot water off the stove. And mom later on said, "How did you know what to do?" And the 6-year-old said, "Mom, it was easy. Paramedic Penguin showed me in school." Maybe there'll be a guy named Ray who saved your father's life when my father was a young man, who never saw the outcome of his gift, and without whom I would not be here today, and I would not be named Ray. And maybe many years later, after your father's passing, your sister will tell you how Dad told her how proud he was of what I had accomplished in my life. Thank you.